Hello everyone, welcome to a very special Gacha Guide. We are covering the latest servant on JP, and do you want to know whether or not she is worth summoning? Then you're definitely in the right place. Today's topic servant is, of course, the Mage of Promised Victory, Castor Artoria Pendragon. We will be covering all the points that you can see on screen here. Most importantly, we will be talking about the Castoria looping system towards the end. So, we'll start by jumping into her stats. Castor Artoria is a 5-star support caster class servant, meaning she's strong against assassins and weak to riders. She has 10,546 attack at level 90. This is the second lowest 5-star caster attack in the game, the only lower being Scheherazade. Her HP at 90 is 14,406. This is the second highest HP in the game, again, second only to Scheherazade. Her hidden stats reveal that her MP gain per hit is 0.54%. This is about the average. And as for her cards, she has 3 hits on Quick, 3 hits on Arts, 3 hits on Busters, and 5 hits on her Extra. You can't get more average than that. That's about as average gets. Her star weight, aka priority for gaining critical stars over others, is 50. This is below average, a fair bit low, which is good. You want your supports to have the lowest star absorption rate as possible so that your damage dealers can grab those stars. Her star creation rate is 11%, again around the average. Overall, her tankiness is quite high, and everything else a little bit average. Now on for her deck of Noble Phantasm. Her deck contains 1 Quick card, 3 Arts cards, and 1 Buster card. She is an Arts-focused deck. Her Noble Phantasm, Around Caliburn, Hope's Radiant Embrace, or... Oh, we've got the wrong image up. Sorry about that. Or Round of Avalon, the Promised Star, which gathers the true round, is a support Noble Phantasm. Let me pop up the proper image here. And there we go. So, this is an Arts Noble Phantasm. It increases the party's attack for 3 turns, between 30 to 50% based on your MP level. It removes all of your party's debuffs. And finally, it provides a unique buff to the team called Solemn Defense. This is invincibility that cannot be pierced. Unpierceable invincibility. Guaranteed invulnerability. The hit counts are based on your overcharge between 1 to 5, and it will last for 3 turns or until it is removed. This can be removed from buff removal skills. This is overall quite a good Noble Phantasm. Not only does it provide a very decent attack buff for the whole party, especially at MP5, but it provides you with the best invulnerability in the entire game, as it has just been added, that cannot be pierced by piercing skills. Which means if your opponent does not have some sort of buff removal skill, you are guaranteed to block some hits. Now let's move over to her passives. Her passives, they're quite good. First off, we have Magic Resistance A, increasing her debuff resist by 20%. Territory Creation EX, increasing Arts performance by 12%, and Independent Magic B, increasing her Arts critical damage by 10%. She has a very Arts-focused deck, so the extra damage on her cards is nice, and most importantly, Territory Creation EX, along with Arts damage up on her cards, provides for higher NP generation when her Arts cards come around, especially if you get a critical hit-off. Very good passives overall. Now moving on to her skills, first off, we have Charisma of Hope. This provides a 3-turn Charisma buff to the party between 10 to 20% attack up, and, more importantly, charges the party's NP between 20 to 30%. This is a fantastic skill. It gives you a 30% team-wide NP gain on 1 skill. That is amazing. That is more than some servants get for just themselves in their entire kit. Moving on, we have Protection of Vivian. Protection of Vivian charges 1 ally's NP gauge between 10 to 20%, based on level, and increases the entire party's MP generation rate for 3 turns between 20 to 30% based on level. Again, an absolutely insane skill. This combined with skill 1 gives 50% MP generation to one ally and also increases everyone's MP gain for 3 turns, making any NP gain, any NP looping a lot easier, including getting herself a much-needed NP generation for if she follows up any sort of attack with an arts card of herself, making it quite easy for her to reach her own MP. Fantastically strong. And finally, we have Caliburn, the Sword of Selection. This increases one ally's arts performance by 30 to 50% for 3 turns, increases their damage versus threat to humanity enemies by 30 to 50% for 3 turns, and gives that ally invincibility for 1 turn. This skill is another crazy good skill. 50% arts buff for 3 turns is as good as it gets, competing directly with Tamamos, while also attaching an invincibility to it, which is arguably better than attaching a heal to it. So in some ways, this is better than Tamamos. Some ways, it's a little bit worse than Tamamos, but it is in direct competition with it. Again, crazy good skill. Every single skill she has is amazing. So what materials do we need to level these amazing skills? It's honestly not that bad. It's pretty easy. We need 15 Forbidden Pages, 18 Seeds of Yggdrasil, 11 Genesis Eggs, and 10 Comet Shards per skill to max out. In total, that's only 45 pages, 54 seeds, 33 eggs, and 30 comets. Not bad overall. The only real issue is that the comets are relatively new, and there have been a lot of servants that have been needing these eggs lately, so I can understand if people are a little bit short on 1 or 2 of those materials. So how does Caster Artoria stack up to her competition? Well, as a supportive 5-star caster, her main competition comes down to Waver, Skadi, Tamamo, Merlin, Linus, and Nero Bride. While Linus and Nero Bride are not casters, they serve a very similar purpose. Her main competition being Tamamo and Nero Bride, with the niche that they're trying to fit in art setups, NP regeneration gain, and all that stuff. Well, I've got great news for fans of Artoria. She absolutely crushes the competition, and despite Nero Bride and Tamamo both being extremely good, Caster Artoria beats both of them out at what they're doing for support. Because of her basically combining both of their main skills into herself, she's able to beat each one directly. And she is directly competing with Skadi in terms of looping strength, putting her right at the top of the food chain of the entire game. Her strengths are incredibly high and her weaknesses are very few. Her biggest weakness is a lack of consistent sustain, so she has a little bit of lack of ideal for longer fights, aside from spamming her own MP. And that's where a servant like Tamamo might come in and beat her out for the arts niche, as Tamamo provides that sustain. But aside from that, when it comes to just fast farming, Caster Artoria is absolutely the top of the food chain for the arts servants. For the arts support servants, I should say. In my personal opinion, it should be obvious Caster Artoria is incredibly strong, insanely so. She provides Skadi levels of looping potential, perhaps even better in some situations. She is without a doubt the best art supporter in the game now. I highly, highly suggest picking her up as she enables an incredibly large amount of servants who couldn't loop before. And besides, it's Artoria, how would you not want to roll for the best Fate Stay Night waifu? I mean, come on. Now, you've obviously rolled for Caster Artoria. What skills should you prioritize in leveling? Hey, guess what? All of them. I suggest just maxing her out as fast as possible. As fast as possible. I don't think any single skill is quite topping another one in terms of how important they are. All 3 of these skills should be maxed. The only one I say has a slight priority is Charisma of Hope, because it's a 30% AoE charge for everyone. But otherwise, max them all. Max them all as fast as possible. Now, as for craft essences to equip this girl with, her own craft essence is honestly not terribly important. You can go for fast NP setups with Kaleidoscope or Imaginary Elements, or you can go for consistent NP usage over time with something like Prisma Cosmos, giving its 8% NP charge or 10% at max limit break. But I would say that one of the better things you can do is giving her Overcharge. Now, better Overcharge is provided by only 2 CEs in the game. They're both 5-star. First off, the One Who Desires Salvation. This will give you Overcharge +2 for 3 NP uses, or 4 NP uses at max limit break. And Demonic Bodhisattva will give you Overcharge +2 for 1 NP use, but will provide you with starting NP charge at 50% or 60% at max limit break. What these do is these guarantee that when you use her MP, you have 3 hits of super invulnerability as opposed to just 1 at a bare minimum. And of course, the One Who Desires Salvation is kind of really good for this because 3 MP uses, 9 hits across your entire team of super invulnerability is quite good. Now, if you feel like you just want to create some stars, Fragments of 2030 is also quite helpful. It can help get some, especially if you're trying to set up for maybe single target challenge fights, get some extra damage output there. But in general, you're mostly focused on getting those NPs and spamming those NPs, so not the most important. Now, as for servants to group Caster Artoria with, she is best set up for arts looping teams, so pairing her with, well, herself is pretty much the best thing you can do. If, for one reason or another, you might need some additional damage, then Tamamo is the next best servant to pull in, as she is also able to provide a 50% arts boost. Maybe you need to plug suit her in for some extra damage, that works. If you need some extra NP generation, then Nero Bride fits that niche very well, with a 45% more MP rate up and 30% MP charge to help out. But this is just talking about what servants work in the support sense. Now, what servants work when it comes to setting up looping? Well, our cup runneth over. There are quite a few servants that are really good at this. All of these servants are... This is pretty much the list of the best possible servants to set up with double Caster Artoria for looping potential. We have Berserker Musashi, Sieg, Archer Joan, Rider Da Vinci, Rider Mordred, Space Ishtar, Lancer Melt, Odysseus, Anastasia, Murasaki Shikibu, Kiara, Scheherazade, and finally, Hokusai. Pretty much in that order is how effective they are and how easy it is to loop with them. And these are some of the best loopers in the game to go with Caster Artoria based on testing and whatnot. Now, they also fit a very specific set of servants, and that is servants who can equip the Black Grail and still have looping and still properly perform looping with double Caster Artoria. The Black Grail providing an extra 60% or 80% at max limit break NP damage means that you are nuking for such a high amount of damage you generally don't have to face the one weakness that Arts Looping has, and that is their follow-up cards aren't as good as quick looping follow-up cards. You're kind of just killing things with the NP anyway. Now, let me talk a little bit more specifically about the Castoria system. I would like to once more bring up a formula for MP gain, which I brought up on the Scotty looping video that I did, the Scotty system. And there it is. Now, there are calculators out there that will completely just do this kind of thing for you. It'll just plug in the values for you and everything like that. But I do want to go over a couple important parts of the formula, a couple of the variables, just so that you have a base level of knowledge for it, so that you know why something will or will not work, and you can make a quick off-the-fly decision. So the first variable is offensive MP rate. That is simply your passive MP charge on attack value. It's a hidden stat. You can find this on wikis and whatnot. and it is often the most important determining factor in how easy it is going to be to loop, and it will easily determine whether a servant has much potential. For example, if you took a servant with a 0.3% NP on attack and thought you could loop with them, you're probably not going to. Whereas a servant with like a 0.9% is going to have an easy time for it. Now, the other most important modifier here is enemy server mod. And that is, quite specifically, a special parameter that is determined based on the class or sometimes the specific enemy. Let me pop up an image for it right here. This tells you exactly what it does. And most importantly, the class is the big thing to remember. The knight classes are the even barometer. You will get normal NP gain from them. Meanwhile, if we go to the top, casters give you 1.2. They give you 120% NP as opposed to the normal 100%. Riders give you 110%. And then the other direction, assassins only give you 90% NP gain, and berserkers only give you 80% NP gain. Basically, the reason that this is important is because if you're loading into an enemy setup that is casters and you're barely making the NP loop, you cannot take that same setup into a loop with berserkers and make that NP loop, because the berserkers will not give you enough NP refund. That is the thing I would most pay attention to with this table. You can try to remember some of the special enemies and their additional NP gain that they can give you, which can help offset their class modifier. But the most important thing is just remember that class modifier when you're trying to set yourself up for your looping system. That's the main thing I wanted to point out. And point out that overkilling gives you a 1.5 times 150% gain, as opposed to not overkilling. A normal kill is just 100%. Those are the big three things to remember. Now, to move on past this this scary equation, I'll make it go away now. The main strength to point out what the Castoria system has, as I said earlier, is the fact that you can use the Black Grail. This pushes the NP damage that you're doing with your looping servant to an extremely high level. It allows for clears to be extremely fast, just the duration of your NP animation. And it helps to alleviate the issue of needing to follow up with a follow-up card. Enemies are going to need extremely high HP values to not be killed just by the Noble Phantasm with this kind of setup. And this is where, in some ways, the Castoria system can be better than the Skadi system. The Skadi system, sometimes you might not, if you don't have extremely high MP levels on your servants, you might not quite clear an enemy. Say on the last wave, it's just one large enemy with 180,000 health or so. You might not clear it with your MP, and you might need to follow up with a critical card or two. That's no problem if your main damage dealer gets a card out. But if your main damage dealer doesn't get a card and it's just 5 Skadi cards out there, it might not quite clear because of it, and you might not be able to get your 3-turn clear off. This, on the other hand, with the Castoria system, is going to alleviate that problem and oftentimes completely bypass that sort of issue. The MP damage that you're putting out is so high that you should be able to just clear it with the NP. And that is extremely powerful. That is massive. Now, that being said, if you can't quite get 100% MP refund, the good thing is you don't necessarily need to use just the Black Grail. You can take something like Painting Summer, which I would say is the other premier CE to take, to help you out with that. It boasts a 10% arts up, 10% MP generation buff up, and 50% starting MP. And that means that it is oftentimes going to guarantee you're going to get your loop off at the cost of some damage. So if you have a servant that's having some trouble looping against berserkers, but they're doing more than enough damage, then you have backups in terms of your CE choice. This really opens up a lot of potential, especially for like event farming and whatnot, because This means that all you really need is a couple of Caster Artorias and a proper farming servant, and your craft essences can be all event craft essences for drops and everything like that. And it means that your time, it means that your speed, all of that is going to be saved as best you can. And the final big strength the Castoria system has that the Skadi system doesn't is it has potential to loop against 2 enemy lineups. The dreaded 2 enemy setup that stops looping in its tracks so often. Castoria's potential for looping is so extremely high with the incredible amount of MP generation, it may allow you to loop against certain setups with that. Again, it'll probably be mostly dependent on the class of enemy that you're against and the servant that you're using, but you will be able to loop against double enemy setups instead of a triple enemy setup sometimes. And that's one thing that Skadi cannot do. That is scary good potential. Scary good potential, how good that is. So, too long didn't watch? Well, let's just let our man Hohenheim there, finish his MP. Good job, Hohenheim. Nice refund. She's extremely good. Caster Artoria is crazy strong. Her looping potential is amazing. Her challenge fighting potential is quite high. Everything in her kit is amazing. The only weakness I can think of for her is a slight lack of sustain, which is covered by other servants. If you're going into a challenge quest and you want to use Caster Artoria, you can bring a Tamamo with her and have that Tamamo be the sustain to make up for her lack of it. And as if you needed another reason, but I've got one more for you. She's both a cute and beautiful Artoria based on what Ascension you're using. Roll for this servant. Go for her. This is the Arts Skadi. That's how good she is. I highly, highly, highly suggest her. 100% go for this servant. If you like this video, check out my Twitch channel and all that. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time. Good luck on your rolls. Go get yourself a Caster Artoria.